Nikita, will you ask Soham to do the streaming?
It's recording, Brenda.
Yeah, I just started the recording. Just to set up the streaming would be awesome.
Okay, sure.
All right. Well, let me just start by saying welcome, 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 everyone. We see all of these wonderful messages in the chat. We just have people from all over, which just makes us so very happy that you are here. Most of you know me. My name is Brenda. I'm the coach trainer here at Coach Transformation Academy. And I am extremely excited to be able to introduce our guest speaker today. Our guest speaker today is Dr. Ann Clancy. She is the co-founder of Appreciative Coaching. She specializes in executive coaching, strategic planning, organizational change, and leadership and team development. Now, Ann has over 30 years of experience in working with organizations, teams, and individuals to create positive change. I am so excited about her being here. She's an international coach, a researcher, a trainer, and an author. So I'm not going to take up any more of this time. I'm going to turn it over to you. Thank you so much, Ann, for being here with us.
Thank you very much, Franda, and welcome everyone. It's just really a great pleasure to be here and to be able to share this 1 hour with you. I have a lot of material to go through, so I'm going to get right at it. I am located, in case you're wondering, in Billings, Montana in the United States. So it's up on the border with Canada, and I'm in the West, so a long ways away. So I'd like to take this time we have together in the next hour to really get a bigger picture of who we are as coaches. So I'm going to talk today about how we can benefit from understanding how our unconscious existential theories and beliefs about change influence who we are as coaches, and then by influencing how we coach. So I've done a lot of research in this area. And so, I will unfold that research as I go through the presentation. And I have 2 opportunities for questions as well. But I'd like you to start off with just jotting down, this is just for yourselves, what do you really believe about the capacity for people to change? And what do you believe about your own capacity for change? And then the second question, what are you aware of in your coaching approach that relates to moving energy? So just take a minute or 2 to jot that down, think about it. So what do you believe? So I come from the organization development background perspective. That's what my Ph.D. is in. And when we were trained in that, we were told that we are the instrument of change. So our whole person, our beliefs, the life experiences we bring, how we feel, our physical aspect, and most importantly, our worldview. So a lot of what I'm going to talk about today is worldview. So in appreciative coaching, a key premise that we have is that you always have to start where the client is. So wherever they are. And then in working with that client, maybe you can move them this much, maybe you can move them this much, but whatever, you have to start where they are. And then we realized after we had written the book, and then we were invited to do coaching workshops and trainings, and we were going around the world and doing it and getting a lot of experience in that. We were realizing that as coaches, we can also only start where we are. So in other words, we can't jump to some other place. We can only be who we are at this moment in time. So therefore, we began to realize, especially as we were training a lot of people who weren't aware of how they truly believed about change. Did they really think that their clients could change or not? So we came to understand that your stance as a coach, no matter what you're training, always consists of your worldview. And that is a mixture of beliefs, assumptions about reality, about human nature, meaning of life. And a lot of these beliefs and worldview that we have, we are just given by the cultures we are raised in, families, countries, etc. And of course, the life experiences that we have. And also in my professional lifetime, so much new information has come up about the capacity for humans to change, that it's profound and it's very energizing. So I would like to share some of that. So we have experienced, just in my professional lifetime, a major shift in beliefs about how humans change. So I'm going to talk a bit about the emerging science of positive human change. And when I say positive, I also mean this word generative. So we have been shifting over the last 30 years from a view of humans from the more mechanistic perspective, Newtonian physics, that humans were more static, that were objects. The view of organizations and people has been in the past a machine model. So we are like machines, and it's a very external view of human beings. So you actually believe that you can fix other human beings. And so you can fix them externally. And the view of time and the rate of change and the capacity for people to change was very much embedded in linear time. So that's that arrow next to the word fixed I have. So, and this viewpoint of these, that the world is a static structure, that our organizations are static structures, that people get to a certain point and then their capacity for change diminishes. This still is very much alive. And I will speak to the United States primarily, but I've presented around the world. And so I've also found this elsewhere, but that's still very much alive, that perspective of human beings and the capacity for human change. But now we know from, quantum physics, chaos theory, complexity theory, etc., that life is really, the universe is a living system. Everything is alive. Everything is in movement. There really is nothing static. Hence this picture I have of the spiral. And even more importantly, instead of being like a machine and fixed, we are actually generative, which means we are life-based. We are life-giving. We are creative. We live in creation. And so the whole field of coaching has come about more or less with this perspective of, human capacity and organizational change. However, many people still have a lot of the old mechanistic perspectives and are completely unaware that they have them. So just to speak to a minute about this movement of life that we are in. So the basic pattern of life is spirals. It can be seen throughout nature, the galaxies, etc. We know that energy, liquid, gases, and biological growth patterns also follow a spiral pattern. And of course, not surprisingly, so do human beings. Our heart moves as a spiral. So we are also, along with the rest of the universe, in motion. We are living systems, and the basic pattern of that is spirals. So this is of importance to coaching because we can harness this energy. So remember I asked at the beginning about what you thought you did with energy in your coaching, because what I'd like, this bigger picture that I would like to get across today is that we are literally coaching the energy in people. We're not really coaching people per se, we're coaching their energy. So this whole idea of spirals has a lot of potential for us as coaches, because you can set an intention and release it along the spiral. And so you can observe yourself and your clients, like, where are you in your spiral? Are you in an upward movement? Are you in a downward movement? And also we've seen from a quantum perspective that we have themes across our lifetime, themes that come up again and again and again in a spiral movement across a lifetime. These include positive things like talents, areas of interest, abilities, and also limiting patterns of thoughts and beliefs. So spirals can bring in new experiences, they can release old information, and all events are in spirals. So we've been seeing this movement, this generative movement, from a more static approach to what humans and organizations are to this more creative, life-based one. And when I say moving towards what's right, I don't mean right in terms of righteous. What I mean is not focusing on what's wrong, because the primary perspective from the mechanistic is that people and organizations are a problem to be solved. When I got my PhD I started in the late 80s, this was the metaphor for organizations. It was a problem to be solved, and I, as a consultant, would go in, help them identify the problem, and then the next problem, and the next problem. Since then, of course, we've had quite a shift with appreciative inquiry, which is an organizational change effort, and many other things, which I'll talk about in a minute, which are showing us a different perspective of how to approach change. So it's shifting attention from what's wrong, what needs to be fixed externally, to what is right, positive, and what can be created. Shifting away from problem solving to being able to imagine a desired future and finding solutions. So seeing organizations and peoples as machines, just seeing them as living systems, moving from problem-focused language to solution or creation-focused language, moving from this whole external, I can actually fix an organization, I can fix people, to supporting clients and organizations to access their own inner process for guidance and accountability. And of course, underneath all of this is this shift from this machine worldview, these are worldviews, to a more quantum, energy-based, generative worldview, which of course, underneath that all is the digital transformation that we're all trying to deal with. So here's just kind of a brief history of the science of positive change. And again, I'm using that word positive in the sense of generative, life-oriented. And appreciative coaching has been a part of that. So for the past 15 years, I've been working and developing and presenting and doing research, et cetera, and realizing the expansion we can have of how we view how people change. So let's talk a bit about the power of beliefs, because with the rise of the importance of neuroscience, we have a lot of information about beliefs. And so we now know that humans, we always have a lens and filter on the world, depending on our belief systems. So some scientists say that we behave congruently with what we believe up to 100%. Now that's amazing. We also know that beliefs direct attention, so they are attractors. In other words, what we tend to see what we believe. We also know that we construct beliefs over a lifetime, but we also start our lives with deep beliefs that we inherit from the environment in which we are raised. And that, to a great extent, these beliefs are unconscious until something happens that they come to a conscious level. So much more of human beings is unconscious than conscious. So this is something of great significance for coaches. So we know that working with clients, if we can change their beliefs in some way, or at least bring their hidden beliefs to view, then they can make deep shifts or change. They can do more transformational change. So literally, our beliefs impact how we engage in life. So I'd like you to take about 3 or 4 minutes to just look at what's on the screen here and then identify where you are. So each one of these, there's 5 levels. They are a continuum. On the left-hand side is a belief about human change, and this is talking all about human change. On the right-hand side is another belief about human change. So what I'd like you to do is just kind of see where you are and do it quickly. You don't need to think a lot about this. Just kind of put an X in your mind of where you think you are on these continuums of change. So I'll give you a few minutes to do that. another 30 seconds. And I believe you can all get a copy of this PowerPoint. So. So keeping this in mind, and if we have time, we'll encounter it again at the end. I'm going to move forward because I want to make sure I have time for questions. So now I'm going to talk about 3 emerging existential beliefs. Existential beliefs meaning beliefs that about the nature of life, about people, the meaning of life, etc. So over my professional life, 3 of these beliefs have emerged, which I think are very pertinent to coaching. So the first one is, how do you define self? So I'm going to present this first one, and then we'll take a break for questions. So there are 2 different perspectives right now in how overall researchers, practitioners, etc., view the concept of self. Some people have made this choice very consciously. Other people hold a concept of self unconsciously because they've never been asked to think differently. So one is that self is an object. So this comes very much from that mechanistic perspective. So that means, we're matter, we're solid. We are an object, more or less, and we are an independent unit. We live in a social context, but we have a body, mind, spirit. It is shaped by the environment, but it is contained as this kind of defined open system, but it's self-standing. It's an object. So with this idea of self as object also comes this idea of fixing, I can fix this object. Now, the other new emerging concept that's come out about self is a different definition, and this is self as process, meaning we are not objects. So if you think of the universe from a quantum perspective, we're all vibration, energy, and motion. So this perspective of self is that we are process. We are this energy in motion. So it means that the transforming brain mind is open to change throughout the lifespan. So we are relational. We're emergent. We emerge. Our lives are process. We're not self-standing on our own. We are influenced by everything around us, and we influence everything around us. So the self then changes, arises, adapts, depending on relationships and situations. So it has no independent existence. This is also a perspective of self that the Gestalt field has held for quite a while. And so, why is this significant? It is in terms of coaching because of this. So on the left-hand side, these are the thoughts we have about self as object, especially if we're coaches. So I'm coaching another human being and they are solid, they're matter. I see them as a discrete object. They're separate from me, and I can look at them objectively. From a generative perspective, or self as process, more energy, self is really indistinguishable from the relationships environment in which that person is embedded. So instead of seeing the person as a more fixed object, I see my client as dynamic, energy-based, and constantly in the process of change. And that client could be, has many, many roles: a parent, a child, a uncle, a professional, etc. So they're, so hopefully you can see the difference. One more fixed, static, the other one in motion. So what is significant about this? The second item I'm looking at is, if we believe that a person is matter, that they're discrete, that they're an object, then they have content and they have their issues. For example, they come to us as coaches with a problem story. And that problem story, because they've had it for a while, has a kind of mass or weight to it that must be moved in some way. But the more our clients talk about the problems they have. So they're focused on the problems. They build that mass, and then the more resistance they create. So it makes it even harder for us coaches to go in there and help our clients let go of their problem story. I mean, we all have our problem stories, and we really hang on to them with great tenacity. So if we look from a generative perspective, with a client who comes with their problem story, we realize, they are a person in process. They have great capacity for change. I can't make them change. They need to be willing, but there are things I can do as a coach to help them be able to shift. And one of the things I can do that's most basic is to shift them off their problem story to a solution story. Anytime I can move them, their energy from being stuck to finding a path forward, then I can really help them. So as this kind of more generative or an appreciative coach, I spend very little time on their problem story. So I consider it my job to intervene if I need to move them off, because I know what they focus on will grow. If they focus on the negative in their problem, that's what they will grow. So by jumping them into a solution perspective, just getting them out of their problem story, I greatly reduce the resistance. And then finally, if I believe that that person, my client, is an object, then I can believe that I can be more neutral around them. Whatever their content is, I can be objective, I can stay at a distance from. But knowing that self is process, if you believe that and we're all interconnected, then I am drawn into the coach, or to the client, and the client is drawn into me. So we are both participating observers in the context and process we're going through to try to help them to change. So what I'm saying is this perspective of coaching, this is definitely an appreciative coaching perspective, and it should be any transformational coaching perspective, is that we are not objects. Instead, we are process, and we have an inner process which is always growing. So instead of being an object, we're actually like a garden. We didn't come into this world as a blank slate. We already came in with specific designs and strengths and talents, etc. So in that way, we are constantly self-organizing through a lifetime. We have this innate design and strengths. So what transformative coaching does is help people tap into the wisdom of their own inner process so they can look inwardly for guidance and knowing to more effectively navigate their lives. And people really need this in this world that we live in now, with increasing complexity and chaos. So we are not a problem to be solved, but we are mysteries to be appreciated. So I'm going to stop right here. 5 minutes for questions. Hello? Anybody have questions they want to ask?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Yeah. Hi, it's nice to see you here. My question is, should we prepare early before a coaching session some sort of questions or a form, or should we pay undivided attention at that moment? What should we do?
So I think you do a combination of both. I have, not much time with you today. So I'm seeking to give you a bigger picture right now. And so I'm not going to be able to go into, a lot of details into how this would look, in your coaching practice, but it's a combination of, yes, you prepare, but when you coach, you are in the moment. So the more you can learn to be present and listening to that person, because you have to follow where they go. Or sometimes you may be leading them in a direction when they are stuck. But yes, all good, effective coaching is present based. That is the whole idea of that. You are in this present moment with that person. So you are in process together. Hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Anybody else? And I can't see any of you, so.
Hi, Anne. We have
Hi.
one more question from Madhav. Should I continue with the question?
Sure.
Okay. He says that how do you coach a person who has mechanistic view of self?
Who has a what type of view?
Mechanistic view.
I'm sorry, I still don't understand.
Mechanic view.
Mechanical view. Yes. Many of your clients will have that. So this is where, you know, as an appreciative coach, it's based in a lot of generative science, and then there are tools and models, etc., so that there are ways you can work with that client to help them open up, to help them shift from a mechanistic view. So really, most coaches have to do that to some perspective. So when I go into a coaching engagement with somebody, I know that I have to start where they are, right? I can only begin where they're at, wherever they are at. But my whole purpose as an appreciative coach is to expand their perspective of their situation and themselves as much as I can. And like I said before, maybe I can only move them this much, maybe I can move them this much, but that's how I will work. And so again, I'm so sorry, I do have a whole body of work that shows how to do that. So I guess I could refer you to my book, but yes, there are many ways that you can shift them from a mechanistic perspective to one that's more generative. But of course, they have to be willing. So I could take maybe one more question.
Kate, would you like to go ahead with the question?
Yes, hi. Thank you so much for inviting me to ask the question. Just in terms of staying present, which I totally appreciate, I'm kind of in my early stages of doing coaching. When you're being present, absolutely, and you're just being guided, you're sort of listening to what they're saying. How, when you know what it is, the route where you went to guide them, yet still stay present, what advice would you give to do that? I know that you're totally in listening mode, you're totally staying present. Where do you, and yet you're still guiding, how do you strike that fantastic balance, which you might never be able to get to? I'd be very interested in your advice on how best to sort of move them out of the negative into the positive and still stay present.
Okay, so I'll give one specific example of what I do, because otherwise, of course, what you're talking about is a lot of the art of coaching, right? And obviously, the more experience you have and so forth, the better you get at that, being able to follow the flow of the conversation. But one thing I do clearly, I've referred to it before, is if they are really hanging on to their problem story, and if you listen, we speak in patterns, so they will say almost exactly the same words, right, over and over again, and of course, the more they describe it, the deeper they go into the problem. So I will interrupt them, and I will tell them why I'm interrupting them. So I will say, and I let it happen 3 times. And then I say, I'm going to interrupt you right now because I've heard you tell me your situation 3 times. And because I know from the science that what you focus on grows. If we continue to focus on your problem, we're just going to grow your problem situation. So the way to help you change, and I'm not doing my job as a coach if I don't do this, help you with this, is that we're going to shift you out of the problem story. I'm going to take you to a different place. We're going to let go of that, because if we do that, then you will be able to move forward. So that's one example of how I do that.
Yeah. And I found that's really useful. Thank you. And also I found that repeating back what they're saying is hugely important, so that they are aware of what they're saying. But yes, again, this is kind of early stuff, but no, thank you very much. I don't want to interrupt
Because, you know, you can listen to their language and you can say, do you realize that you use the word problem, you know, 10 times in the last half hour? I mean, you can give them feedback like that. So I'm going to move on. I'm sorry to be so fast here, but this is the time we have. So second emerging belief is life is motion. So again, this generative idea, life is self-organizing. It's constructive in the sense that we construct our reality, that kind of basis of social constructionism. Also, we can view life as evolutionary in terms of stages of consciousness, which I'm going to talk about. And then life is this inner process which reveals itself over a lifetime. So here's just a sampling of theorists who support this kind of generative principles and perspective of change. And I'm going to be talking about Robert Kegan and then these developmental evolutionary change theorists. But again, you've got this whole list of people to refer to. So there is an evolution of human and organizational change. I mean, we can see that. So I'm presenting in a few sentences an enormous whole field of human change. So just bear with me that it's like a wine tasting, you're getting one sip of this. But I just want you to get the overall concept of the organizational movement. So there are a number of, they call them developmentalists or evolutionists, who have looked at the evolution of human change. And they've put together that every time humans have a new stage of consciousness that emerges, they tend to invent a new way to collaborate and invent a new organizational model. So some of you may know the work of Frederick Laloux. This is also based on people like Ken Wilber's work, but it's saying very simplistically that we've moved through these different stages of consciousness in humankind, starting with what they call red or tribal, where the perspective of life, trying to explain life, was using magic. The metaphor is like a wolf pack. And the worldview was very egocentric, starting maybe 15,000 years ago. Then the next major change that came in human life was what's called the amber conformist. And they just named them colors in order to make it easier for people to understand. So this is when all major religions were established around the world. And much of the perspective of how to explain life was through myth, through religion. A kind of metaphor is the army, because it was the establishment of formal hierarchies, stability, authority from the role, whereas with tribal, authority would be from the chief. And the worldview there is that people conform. There are certain stations in life, and it's very ethnocentric, you know, based on where this, you know, the organization and the people are. Then much later, around the 1600s, came a new wave of human consciousness called Orange Achievement. And this is when science began to make itself known, the metaphor being that of a machine, industry, you know, eventually ended with what we have today, multinationals, modern, you know, it's around profit and growth, much more materialistic. And authority came from being effective. So if you could be goal-oriented, then you could be effective in this stage of consciousness. And then the worldview shifted then to one being more of the world, because there were multinationals. And it really peaked after World War II. Then we really came into the multinationals. And then much more recently has come the green pluralistic consciousness of change. So this came in with this kind of information age, technology. The metaphor is family, culture-driven, values, equality, empowerment. The whole organization development field, you know, arose from this perspective. So the worldview now is more adaptive, it's more relativistic, so not conformist, as in with the amber, and again, world-centric. And this began to, started in the early 18th, 19th centuries, when almost around the world they abolished slavery, even though we know slavery still exists. It was abolished formally around the world, but it kind of peaked in the 1960s. And then most recently is this teal evolutionary stage of consciousness. And coaching is very much connected with this. And this is a much more holistic perspective, living, organizing organisms, that we are self-organizing, that we're life, that there's purpose, that we're interconnected, and that as human beings, we're autonomous, and that we can live from the inside out, and it's more cosmos-centric. Each wave of this consciousness is because there are greater levels of complexity to be dealt with, and so humans have to evolve to deal with this complexity. So just one more piece on this. So what seems to be quite astounding, what these evolutionists are saying, is that the red, amber, orange, and green structures of consciousness, ways of looking at the world, and they're all embedded. We as human beings have all gone through these as we've grown up. So you can't be born teal or born green. You go through all of these. But all of the preceding ones were based, they're called first tier consciousness, more on a sense of lack and scarcity and deficiency. And what they're seeing now with this new teal structure of consciousness coming in is that it's based more on life, abundance, that you can trust in life, that there's even greater complexity coming, and that we need to deal in more refined ways. So a kind of a leap in consciousness is what they're saying. So again, why is this important to coaching? So there is a kind of a teal worldview that's been summarized. And when I read this, it's before I knew about any of this. I read a chapter and it was called Teal, and it was from Frederick Laloux's book. It was maybe 5 or 6 years ago. And as I read through the chapter, I thought, this is me. Oh my gosh, how could somebody describe me and my beliefs and what I think? And then I realized, oh, I am part of a bigger movement. There's like a new consciousness coming in, and I'm a part of that. So in that is this idea that you have an inner rightness as a compass that you can follow. You don't need to rely so much on external authority. That life is a journey of unfolding, that we have a true nature, that we have strengths we can build on. There are ways we can learn to deal gracefully with adversity, because of course we all are going to face adversity. That we can value a wisdom that's beyond just the rational kind of machine age look at knowledge, that there are other domains of knowing, intuition, etc., that we can get beyond just setting goals and instead kind of listen to the life that wants to be lived through us, that we can strive for a more wholeness, that there is a field of energy we're connected with, and basically that organizations are living systems that have a life of their own. You take everybody out of the organization, it's still alive. So now I'm going to move to the third belief, meaning making as movement. I know I'm going very quickly and giving you a lot, but hopefully it'll be interesting to you. So just what do you see in this picture? I know you don't need to answer me, but just look at the picture for a while. And then you should see a change. Hopefully you should see other images of the man pop out at you. Right, so you should see a total of 6. So when you look at these, what do you see? What do you see in the upper left? If you look into that picture. It takes a while for it to reveal itself, but you should eventually see a woman sitting in a chair. If you look to the picture to the right, you should see a face in the sky. If you look at the spiral at the bottom, the more you look at it, the more it moves. So the whole idea I'm trying to get across to you is that we are always in movement. So this is Robert Kegan's work. He's an American psychologist with really incredible work he's done. So he has also come to the realization that human beings are activity. We construct our reality. and that we construct our reality and we change through these stages of, we have stability and then we have change. So he describes when people make meaning, is that when they do that, that is a fundamental motion in personality, because what happens is that something that was hidden or embedded in a person becomes revealed. It comes out of them, then they can look at it. Instead of being in them, it's out of them, so they can kind of look at it, I'm holding my hand, as an object, and then be able to understand it and then do something with it. So what he's saying is that when we work with our clients, and you have clients who have aha moments, who have insights, where they realize things, we all have them as well, all human beings doing, is that there's some movement within us. And it's a movement from something that's hidden from us to something that becomes revealed. And he also points out that in order for this to occur, we need other people around us. So coaches are very significant in the role they play with that. And because we can help our clients make meaning of the change that they've gone through. So this is why it's so important for coaches to remain present in the coaching conversation, because you could literally have somebody make meaning right in front of you. And if you're not watching that, then you will miss it, and you won't be able to respond to it and help them make meaning of it. So it's very significant sitting with a client and observing or seeing how they make meaning in a moment through this movement. And there's one other perspective that supports this, another spiral view, and this is from hermeneutics. And hermeneutics is just the study of interpreting texts. It comes basically from interpreting sacred texts, but it's now used together with phenomenology. And again, it explains this idea that all human change is around this movement of something that is hidden, comes into view, becomes revealed to us, and then usually needs to be interpreted in some way. So as coaches, our language can help them with that. Every person's experience is unique when they have this, but if we can anticipate and know this is what our clients are going through, then we can play a very critical role for them. So just some principles of powerful movement. So for me, this is my belief now, that coaching is, I'm coaching energy. I'm helping that person move, be a lot more adaptive. So everything moves as a spiral. So where am I as a coach when I sit down with my client? Am I spiraling up? Am I spiraling down? Where is my client? Knowing that everything is moving and everything is connected. And also stillness is a kind of a movement. If you're being versus doing. And that as human beings, we are really designed to reframe our stories and lives. We are literally wired as human beings to grow and develop. If we do not, it's because we have been suppressed in some way. It is the natural evolution of human beings. And in today's day and age, we need to do it in a manner that's, can deal with much more complexity. So I would like to invite you to reinterpret your coaching role. So if you know that your existential beliefs about life lead to values you hold, which in turn influence your behavior in coaching, then you can consciously identify and choose where you are on that continuum of change that I showed you. So, it needs to be your choice. You need to find your place, but my request would be, please do it consciously as much as you can. Know what you believe about change. Again, these are the beliefs I have. They're generative beliefs that we're internally driven, and we as coaches help our clients access their inner process. That we are all embedded in a certain stage of consciousness. I forgot to say this, because this helps a bit. Let me go back to this. So this ladder metaphor. So we are as human beings a mixture of all of these. So me and Clancy, I probably got some red, certain areas of my life. I'm tribal, I have all of those embedded in me, but they're like rungs of a ladder. But when you get to a certain rung, then you can only see most clearly from that place. So if you are only down here with amber, then you cannot see the orange or the green or the teal. If you are at the teal, then you have these rungs below you. But wherever you are, we are all bound by the stage of consciousness in which we live. We can only see best from that perspective. So let me get back to, okay, so just know that we are all embedded in whatever stage of consciousness. We're on a rung of the ladder. So, we're energy-based, we're in continual process, life is motion, and all meaning comes from a movement, from what was hidden and embedded to what is revealed. So I will stop, I'll leave it right here. I'll stop now for questions. And then if we have time, I'd like you to just, well, here, I'll leave this up to see if what I presented makes any sense now in terms of these continuums of change. I'll leave this up for a few minutes and then I'll take this off so I can see you all. So any questions, comments, suggestions, objections?
Yes, and we have a few questions lined up for you from our participants. The first one is from Margarita. Thinking of an organization going into transformational change, how we can understand the equivalent to human beliefs that we need to understand to derive the desired change.
So what exactly is the question?
Margarita is asking in terms of organization that is going through a transformational change, that how we can understand the human beliefs that we need to understand and then drive the desired change.
Obviously, if you are interested in this kind of evolutionary perspective of humans and organizations, there are things that you can read that will give you different descriptions of different types of organizations. So there are still, for example, in the United States, many orange organizations, multinationals. We have, government, the army, those are all more amber type organizations. Then we have nonprofits, environmental, ecological type organizations. Those are usually green. And then right now we have a few organizations that are beginning to emerge with teal characteristics. So if you can kind of understand, and like Laloux's book highlights that there are certain characteristics of organizations representing this certain kind of consciousness. And so clearly you're always going to be coaching people coming from different stages of consciousness, as well as yourself. So you may be coaching somebody from an amber organization or from an orange type organization. So I think understanding the characteristics, and then again, you can only start where they are. So if where they are, those characteristics are hindering their change, then you can begin to point that out. That would be one way to help them shift. Hopefully that answered.
Thank you, Anne. We have two more questions for you.
Okay.
In the evolutionary momentum, at what phase it is best to interrupt an individual to deliver most impact?
So in terms of, you mean in like a coaching conversation or?
Yes, I guess in terms of a coaching conversation with respect to evolutionary momentum.
Yeah, I think the best way to take this information I presented today is as a big picture. So I think if you start there like, number one, I'm coaching people who are probably at different stages of consciousness. For example, in the United States, we are clearly divided as a nation between people who are grouped around the red, amber, and orange, and people who are more grouped around the green, and some people who are teal. So we have a big divide in the United States right now between those two. So it's more like if you understand that whoever you are coaching is embedded in whatever structure of consciousness they are. So I don't normally explain this to clients unless they would be very interested in knowing this. I just take it as knowledge that I know, like, oh, how they're thinking, they're thinking they need to be much more conformist when maybe they need to find their, their own path forward. So I help them see that distinction, but I don't, talk to them about evolutionary change.
Right. Thank you, Anne.
You're
We
welcome.
have one more question from Mohammed. Most of the time, I get emotional while coaching and could not be able to coach up to the full extent. How to get rid of this?
So just, all right, ask me that again. I was in the middle of...
Sure. Mohammed is asking that most of the time I get emotional while coaching and could not be able to coach up to the full extent. How to get rid of this?
So that it becomes emotional in coaching?
Yes,
So
while
emotional,
coaching.
what's that?
While coaching.
Life coaching?
While coaching, he becomes too much emotional. So how can he give his full extent while coaching as a coach?
Okay, well, so number one, we are intrinsically emotional as human beings. So emotions are a very important part of how people change. So emotions are there, whether we want to acknowledge them or not. And so an appreciative coach or a generative, positive oriented coach is seeking to help their client have as much positive feeling as they can. So we try to move them away from, their problem perspective to a more, solution focus. We try to help them find support in their lives, etc. So, and we acknowledge if our clients show up with feelings, we acknowledge them. Oh, you feel sad today, or you're very happy today. And then for you as a coach, obviously, before you sit down with a client, I always center myself because I know I'm a process, my client is a process. So I meditate, I center myself, and I ask for my highest good and the highest good of the client I'm going to be working with. So I did this before I did this webinar. I sat, asked for all of our highest good because we're all working together on this. And so I need to know where are my emotions before I sit down with my client. So I'm guessing he means that he gets emotionally involved in his client. So it's too deep of a topic for me to be able to address, but emotions are highly, highly significant in coaching. I'm sorry, that's probably about all I can say right now.
That's a great tip, Anne. We have here Jack waiting for the question. Jack, would you like to continue? Jack?
I think the question has been addressed. Thanks, Nikki.
Oh, okay.
Hi, Anne.
We have one more question, Anne, from Yobda. Is changing consciousness enough to have transformation? Could clients and we as coaches undergo change without goal setting or action?
Right. So deep change, people who, if you have an insight or what we say in English, an aha moment, something where we understand something more clearly than we did before. These are not moments that we can make happen because the client doesn't know they're going to have it. We as a coach, we don't know if they're going to have it. So that kind of meaning making, which I referred to with Robert Kegan, that happens internally and then it comes up to the conscious level. So as coaches, we can anticipate for our clients that they will, have these moments of insight, that they will have a deeper understanding of their situation and where they're at and what they want out of life. But we cannot predict it and we can't make it happen. But we're there for them should it happen, and we can anticipate that they can. And then of course, there are lots of things we can do as coaches to help that. And again, too many things for me to go into detail. So I always start all my coaching engagements with, I start where the client is, and then I just try to expand them as much as they let me. The client must be willing. They're not going to change if they're not willing. And so I do what I can, as I'm working with them. So my intent is transformational when I work with clients, but I don't know which clients are going to transform, have transformational moments, and which don't, but I go in with that intent. So I don't go in with a transactional coaching intent, meaning I'm just very goal-oriented, very surface. Yes, you need to do these things, report to me, in the next week. It's just not my style of coaching. I think as coaches, you have to decide, am I more of a transactional surface, kind of goal-oriented, more orange type of coach? Or am I a deeper level coach? Am I like a teal coach where I really want to be open to and anticipate my clients, changing at a deeper level, although I have no control over that. I don't know. I kind of lost myself in the answer, hopefully. Did I answer the question?
Yes, I hope they got your point, and we have a lot of comments saying thank you for your insightful presentation, and of course they would like to know the title of your book. So could you please?
I think it's on the last page of the. Yeah, I have two books and then a chapter in a book that just came out last May. And that book, in that chapter, are these emerging beliefs. So I have appreciative coaching, and then pivoting, a coach's guide to igniting substantial change, and then leadership and innovation coaching. No, innovation and leadership. Sorry, I can never remember the name. So this is I have a chapter in this book. So innovations in leadership coaching. And that has like my latest work in it. But, all of the books, it's a professional lifetime of work. So it all builds on one another.
Okay, we'll surely share your titles with the participants.
Yeah, please share my PowerPoint, please.
Yes, we will surely share your presentation also. We have lots of comments that are saying thank you to you, fascinating work, new perspectives, influential answers. So we would like to give, would you like to continue with the question anymore?
I can keep answering questions if people want to ask. Sure.
So anybody up for the question or? No, I think we can wrap up here.
Okay, it was a great pleasure. Please contact me. I'd love to hear from you all as to how you're doing. And so we're all in this together. We're all learning together. We're all sharing our knowledge and insight together. This is what makes for good coaching. So I wish you all the best in your coaching.
Thank you, Anne. It was a great presentation and we learned a lot with you.
Thank you.
And we hope to see you around.
Yeah, me too.
Have a great day ahead, Anne.
Thank you. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you, Anne.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Bye.